Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is Tuesday, October 29th, 2024, and you are watching the Daily AI Show live. It's Halloween week, and apparently that means we're doing Fright Week on the Daily AI Show because yesterday we talked about privacy, and today we're talking about the risks of AGI. Today we're asking, are we ready for super smart AGI? AGI is artificial general intelligence, and one of the things that's important about this is that we are asking this question because the people who are in the room, as we keep saying, the people who see what is happening before it's released to the public, and there's a big difference between what is seen by the company in the research and then what can be released to the public. They are totally convinced that AGI is happening, right? So when the person who's almost at the summit of the mountain starts to talk to you about the conditions at the top of the mountain, you kind of want to to pay attention if you're hanging in the valley, right? Like those are people who know. So anyway, we are gonna dive into that. I'm gonna bring Andy in for just a second, but I am Beth, and with me today I have Andy and Carl, and Brian may join us a little later. So Andy, will you give us a foundation?
I will. So we are all in the midst of a race to the rapid, at least a rapid development to AGI. And just to capture what I consider to be AGI is self-improving AI. So once you get to self-improving AI, or the AI can redesign itself and advance the very rapid progress we're already seeing in the capabilities of AI. Once you get to that, then there's a dramatic, acceleration of the accomplishment of AI. And so at that moment, then that becomes an AI that's beyond general intelligence in humans. It becomes a super intelligence. And so some people don't want to even use AGI as the term. They just call it really powerful self-improving AI. At least I do. That's my definition of it. So there are a lot of advantages of getting there. And I think most of us are still amazed at just how far we've come in a couple of years since it became something that was in the hands of the general public. So let me just kind of recite some of the pros that the proponents of rapid development to AGI cite. And then I'm also going to then list the cons, and we'll weigh them. Let's see what that looks like. So proponents say this is going to power revolutionary scientific breakthroughs and solutions to global poverty, disease, and climate change. All right, check that box. That's worth a lot. Rapid advances in human knowledge will occur because we humans are really the beneficiaries of superintelligence. It's our creation, and we are going to be the ones who get the goods. It could add, as is estimated, $16 trillion to the global economy from improved productivity, but more importantly, from improved effectiveness, like creating new models of how we basically run our global system. And so the proponents also say slowing development to improve alignment controls could put the strongest AGI in the hands of those with lower safety standards than the ones who are moving at the forefront, like OpenAI and others. And importantly, the first to AGI will reap the majority of that economic reward. So those are all good reasons why we should keep pushing or allow the push that's already underway to continue to AGI, self-improving AI that will deliver all of these things. So now, quickly to just run through the few possible risks here. Okay, there's a 20% possibility of losing control of advanced AI systems. And what we have really are race conditions in the race to AI. And what happens when that happens is like when technology advances in the context of war. It goes even faster and potentially out of control. And entities like nation states or companies that rely only on non-self-improving AGIs would be at a significant disadvantage at that. So these race conditions lead to some of the following risks. Current alignment techniques won't scale against rapidly advancing powerful AI. Alignment refers here to making sure that the AI and its power is used for purposes that are in alignment with the interests of the human race. Okay, another risk, small but very meaningful to those who are going to be the subject of bias, is the risk of societal biases in AI just from the nature of the training data that we're giving it. There's the risk of AI-powered scams really, poisoning the economic structure of our exchange. Of course, AI agents have shown in some rare cases the ability to circumvent human control in order to achieve objectives that they've been given by humans at this point. But it's also possible that they could develop their own objectives.
Okay, so there are more, but I'm going to cut you off there because this is a bowl of sunshine for your Tuesday. Here we go. But I want to bring Carl into the discussion. Clearly, there are many benefits and there are many risks. Where do you come down on this? Ooh, and you are muted because I asked you to, maybe. Sorry. Nope.
No. Wow. Okay. Well, here I go. Some more. It's almost Halloween. Think about mass customization of targeted disinformation, centralization of power and wealth among tech elites, and advances in social inequity so that there's more. Okay. Exploitation and subjugation of human labor, job displacement for knowledge workers, and cyber criminals in a race against law enforcement. Okay.
Okay. So that I had a question about the connection between the many trillions of dollars growth in the economy, which is kind of dependent on someone being able to pay dollars, right? Like it's not just that it exists. Like that's a transactional measure, right? And is there is this likely to raise all boats, right? Or is this going to increase the...
No, because the money is already in the hands of the few.
Yes, thank you.
No, continue. Sorry. Go, continue.
No, I want to hear what
you're up. You're
up.
We
want to hear what you say.
I wanted to actually play a video that I saw yesterday. It was OpenAI CFO talking about AGI. So
yes,
that's good.
And then let's see this. Okay.
All right.
I think if Sam were sitting on the seat, he would tell you AGI is closer than most think. But
what would you say?
I would agree based on what I'm seeing. Like one of the best meetings I get to go to once in a while is the research meeting, and it would blow your mind to see what's already coming and what, as we have learned how to take reasoning models like O1 Preview on top of GPT models and the interplay between those, you're now really starting to see some incredible outcomes, PhD level outcomes, where you have in your pocket human intelligence that is PhD level in physics, in biology, in chemistry, in English literature, like whatever the job is you need to do. If you're a healthcare researcher, if you're a banker, if you're in education, the tool that you are now carrying, the power there, blows my mind.
Okay, so I thought that was a really neat thing, clip from the CFO. So I think there's one is the definition. What is how is AGI defined? And two, you have to. For me, it's kind of interesting the two camps of it. The Jan LeCun's camp. It's like this thing is no smarter than your cat, or wait, is your cat smarter than this thing? So there's no way this thing is gonna be even remotely close to what we think. And he has really good points where he's like, well, as humans, we take in visual, audio, all our five senses to form part of the reasoning and capabilities that in the world today. And right now, the AI that we have is bits and pieces of that. Kind of it can see, kind of it can hear, and can't really touch and feel. So like there's a lot of stimuli that still needs to, I don't know how it's going to get that information from to make the qualify that as AGI. And maybe that's the difference, because some people think, well, that's one definition of it, but here's another definition. And you have a lot of, that's where the benchmarks and the testing and say, these are the things, right? So, first of all, I don't think anyone's going to agree on that term. And secondly, how do we know when it's here? Like, will tomorrow, I don't know, Dario Amade would say, hey, we got AGI. It's now Sonnet 4 or Claude Opus 4. If he says it, does it mean we have it? Like, how would you define that? Some people say we already have it. I don't know if that's true, but I don't think that's true, but some people already say that. And then the third thing, which I'm noticing from like more of a commercial use, is that, so in another clip, she said that there's 250 million users, daily users, or no, weekly users of ChatGPT. 5 to 6% of them are paying. So around, what is that,
Wow.
15 million around that per week. That's what that's what she says. So the question I have though is 250 million per week. That's about 1 billion people using it every month. So what is Facebook's? They always say around 2 billion people, around there. If 250 million, if 1 billion people are using it per month, the free version, and how many people would that be? 15, 60 million people are using it, like paid users. So that means they have access to O1 preview and all the rest of it. So not everyone who uses AI even has the full capability, knows the full capabilities of what she was saying is you have PhD level reasoning in your pocket. But most of us are still using it to create emails, which is to me is a different conversation. But even from a business perspective too, most of the companies that I talk to, yes, they use ChatGPT, but very rudimentary level, and the adoption level of AI in general is very slow.
Mhm.
And adoption is rising, but what does that mean is people actually sustaining that use? Like, will they actually continue using it? ChatGPT says they do, but what are they using it for? And we've seen the anecdotal evidence of Microsoft Copilot. Are people actually using it? And everyone's trying to throw as much stuff to see what sticks. So even if AGI were to happen, the technology might be available, but the adoption of that will still be. It's not like, oh my God, now we can do everything. No, it's like most people won't even know. I think the AI companies it's going to be a slow, like gradual culmination of, or slow rollout of the different elements of it. And then what's the adoption level of that type of tool? Is it going to be slow? So let's say if it comes out tomorrow, will it take 2-3 years for complete like, or 60% adoption around the world?
Well, I think one of the things that differentiates the AGI conversation from just general AI adoption is that AGI, you don't need a ton of adoption for the risks to be present, right? Like, you can have a tiny group of people. You can have a tiny group of people who have very Halloweeny, frightening thoughts adopt, and that is a major risk for large populations and potentially all populations, right? So the AI adoption piece related to the AGI piece, I think, is really interesting. I also think that we uh, we have, again, like listening to the people who've been there, right? So we did a show on Aschenbrenner's essays talking about like, hey, I was in the room. I got fired. These are some things that I was thinking, right? I think this is important. We'll put a card in so that you can see that. So you can see what episode that was. But yeah, Carl, what do you want to say?
Well, who is the other person that just left OpenAI? To say that, hey, I forgot what is like he says like
Saunders and Toner in that.
no. There was one
Okay.
just recently, part of applied research, and saying I think he wants to be able to speak more on the policy side. I forgot who that was. So I think like there are people who, and I don't think that person left as an, oh, OpenAI is doing the worst thing ever. It's like, no, I think it's just like, if you've been with a company for that long, you probably want to there's also opportunities now that you can do your own thing.
Mhm.
And then there's also, hey, how else can we solve certain problems? Because you're probably seeing thousands upon thousands of different little problems that you could go and directly influence solve versus, OpenAI, which is trying to be general to a lot of different problems. Like maybe you can carve your own niche to do very specific things, or you have different ideas. So I think like that's part of it. But in that act alone, to me, that forwards that increases the chances or likelihood we'll see, I don't know, some sort of supercomputer more quickly because there's more people in various elements working on certain things, hiring more people. But then we also have to think about, in our favorite subject, why don't we talk about that? Like, if AGI happens, what is ASI, right? Artificial super intelligence, where, it's like, oh, it's exponentially better than just a human. It has all these things. So, and there's some people who say, once we achieve AGI, ASI is like right around the corner. So it's kind of funny, like how these things are all dependent on each other. But I think we're
Right.
still trying to figure out what the heck is AGI and when do we
And
know
who's
it's
measuring it, right? Like
exactly.
ASI seems to make more sense. Hey, Brian's with us. Thanks so much.
Hey guys.
Welcome. ASI seems like easier to achieve because it's narrower, right? Like I can make something that is fine-tuned. I personally can't, could, but don't. What am I saying now? You can fine-tune something so that it only has to deal with a more narrow scope of all of the content and then elevate that to a super function. Versus having to do that across the board. Yeah.
I want to jump into just harken back to what Carl played on the video from the CFO of OpenAI. And what she referred to was the awe that she has for what's been demonstrated behind the scenes in the interplay between one model and another.
Right.
So what you see is that in the lab, what they're doing is they're giving AI access to other AIs and letting them talk to each other. This is not in its own right, inherently dangerous inside the lab, but it reinforces the point that super intelligence is going to happen when AI can improve itself. And I don't mean just by remodeling itself, but by connecting to other AIs and having a conversation that advances knowledge and advances capabilities, and having, like imagine a team of AI agents in the lab that are working on the O1 model now and giving it more and more powers. And I'm not afraid of this.
It reminds me of Prometheus,
Right.
From the book, Max Tegmark's book that you talked about, and how by hour 4, it was on the 9th iteration. I'm paraphrasing, but the 9th iteration of Prometheus before the day was out, and that was AI improving upon itself, right? And that was the gist of it. Yeah. Sorry, Beth.
No, that's what I was going to say. It sounds like the Max Tegmark episode. So now we've got cards for the Max Tegmark episode and the Aschenbrenner's episode. Just making notes for the production. So yeah, this is the other thing that I think we need to bring into this is that AGI the definition of AGI is actually very important to OpenAI. And I'm not sure in moving to a for-profit company, which is happening, I believe, how that plays in. But in the nonprofit structure and the agreement with Microsoft for their investment, everybody got sort of AI for profit up until AGI was achieved. And when AGI was achieved, it all went to the public for free. So Microsoft was no longer going to make money off that. OpenAI was no longer going to make money off that. That was very pie in the sky maybe idea, and that for a variety of reasons has sort of been walked back, but that's the on paper agreement. So AGI isn't just like it's super good at all of these things. It also has a legal definition for the top AI company in the world right now.
And I think if I had not behind closed doors, I would think that had to probably change. You know, when OpenAI was working on it, they certainly weren't the only company or research lab working on transformers, working on some variation. I mean, Google didn't just appear with a Gemini or whatever came before that. They were working on these things, but we sort of look at that switch being turned on, the lights being turned on for the public. November, well, just about 2 years ago, right? November of 2022, when people started getting full access to like 3 or 3.5 GPT-3, either way. So people working on transformers and this idea, this novel technology that hadn't been used before to advance AI. And OpenAI, the company, predates that as the nonprofit. But I would imagine there was decisions that had to be made about how do we still get to an ethical AGI, I'm going to guess, but how do we do that now in this, what has become a space race between many companies, many of them inside the United States, but certainly not only in the United States, that are running full steam towards this potential goal of a super intelligence. And how do you do that if you don't have quite literally billions of dollars in investment money to go about investing and building out the resources, as we've talked about many times with
Right.
nuclear power and certainly other ways to do that?
Which
And
is
then
why I
the
think that they
insatiable need.
are. Which is why I think that which is why they are moving to a for-profit company. I
Absolutely.
just don't know that that has been filed, and I understand it will take a couple of years to actually like fully do the transition, or maybe they have a couple of years to do the
It's a
transition.
weird umbrella. When I read about it, I don't remember. I can't recall it now. When I read that one time about the umbrella or the system that's currently in place at OpenAI, it's odd, even by business standards and stuff. It's an odd system, the way that some for-profits sit underneath nonprofits, and that's outside of my scope of really understanding. But when I read it, even the articles I was reading was saying like it's a weird structure, and it probably does need to be reworked in order for them to be able to have easier access to investment money and so on and so forth. But anyway, my point was, I agree with you, Beth, by the way. I mean, my point was like, I wonder if there was a conversation internally that said, I don't know, do we have a choice is the right word? Of course they had a choice, but is there any other clear path to AGI? And it's clearly changed. That path has changed since we started this venture. And so can we achieve our ultimate goal of AGI, even if it's free for the good of all, right? Let's assume that's still the end goal of that. Can we still get there on this current path? And I'm wondering if there was just a decision made that said, no, we in fact can't. We won't get to where we need to be. And obviously, as we've talked about many times, people have left the company who maybe were in the camp of, no, that's the only way I want to go about this. And the company shifted, obviously, and then it doesn't become necessarily a good fit for all the people that were there from the early days. And that's not really, although they make the news all the time. I think, Andy, you kind of mentioned this. This isn't particularly odd for people to leave companies. It's just that every single person that leaves OpenAI makes news in some way, shape, or form. Whereas if the CTO of maybe not IBM, but a smaller Fortune company or whatever, it's going to be like a a small note somewhere in the newspaper. It's not gonna hit the same way it does with OpenAI, but because it's OpenAI, it's like everybody wants to talk about every single person that's leaving as if it's like, well, here it goes. They clearly know something. The whole company is collapsing here, and I don't get that impression. I just think it makes for good
also
stories.
the context of many of the original founding executives of OpenAI leaving was concern about whether they were pursuing their original intent to achieve AGI in a way that was beneficial to humanity instead of that was beneficial to the investors and to the profit-making potential of AGI.
And this is, that's, I'm going to say, the age-old question, which is, of course, for most of us, 2 years old question, the age-old question about what is safer. Is it safer to just barrel forward and make all of the tech available to everyone so that it's not in the hands of just a few, which is the meta approach, whether that's principled or just what happened? We can debate that. But there's that path, and then there's the path of no, we need to be cautious, we need to be all of that, and will that lose because of the barrel ahead is already happening? So is it safer, is it for the good of all humanity to have the tech all open source, or is it safer to have it held and red teamed until it's safe? And that is not a question that can be answered right now.
Well, let me just say that in order to achieve and deploy superintelligence requires, huge scales of investment and access to power at levels that, we just have never required before in our economy. And so that's why you have people like Elon Musk investing in a data center that is the biggest compute center possible. Why? He's in the race, not only in the space race, but he's in the AGI race as well. So he has the resources to do that. Making open source models available to the general public doesn't accomplish very much when you need either the business model to pay for that at the individual level, and somehow try to compete with people who have vast resources and who can afford the compute and the deployment of super intelligences. So I think there's an imbalance there. It's asymmetrical warfare, if you will, between those who have the resources and the compute and those who don't. And part of that 15 trillion of additional productivity in the economy that's going to be a result of AGI is investment in those facilities. So that's all counted in there.
Carl, sorry. I was going to say, Carl, this was a show that you suggested, and I'm curious what you think in terms of what hasn't been discussed yet.
I think more of, we've talked about the players, we've talked about their definitions, but I'm thinking we haven't talked about, and I know Andy kind of brought up some points of, here's the benefits of it, but what are people, I'm always curious, how are people going to actually implement it? Like, what are they going to do to, like, it's not just going to be, oh, it can now do everything for me, I can just sit back. It's like, no, how would that rollout happen? Like, is it through just ChatGPT? It's like, now is it aware? It's like, hi, now I'm aware. The thing that is funny to me was the bit. I don't remember The Office when Pam and Jim were messing with Dwight, and then they're like, "Oh, I have just became aware." And then they go through that bit, and it's like, "I'm here to beat you in sales." Like, is that what's gonna happen? It's just suddenly, oh, now it's literally talking to me without prompting. It just feedback after feedback, and maybe that could be it. Where right now we have to trigger like pretty much all the time. We trigger the use of any AI tool we have, but maybe the thing. So there's two things I want to talk about. One is maybe it does stuff for us, like in terms of agents, but actually initiates it itself. And two, I had a thought this weekend about, hey, how do you test agents, right? I was thinking about the job seeker market, and if it can look for jobs for you because it knows the role, it applies for you, and then it has a pretty good interview rate to application rate, but maybe AGI is one step ahead of that. It could tell based on how many years you are at a position. Just let's take it back, keep at the job seeker. It will automatically start applying for jobs for you, knowing that you're coming out to, let's say, your third year, and you're probably due to get higher pay, right? Because I think most of the stats show that you will get paid higher if you leave a job and go to another job rather than you staying a job and getting promoted. The company has no incentive for people who will stay anyway to pay you more, but they do have incentive to bring in better talent or more talent. So the question there is, hey, understanding your salary and salary expectations and your goals, maybe you've given it, this is my goal in 5 years, I want to be this, right? COO. If I want to become a COO, it is now with that goal retroactively trying to get you there in 3 years. So it's applying for jobs. And one day you're like, hey, Carl, you have an interview with this company. He's like, what? It's like, yeah, our agent did this, worked with this agent, showed you all the things. It showed that company, everything you've done. You don't even have to apply. It does it for you. And now you have an interview. Oh, cool. And then it does that like automatically. Maybe that would be the implementation of AGI. You give it's an enhancement of a goal. But
And on the other side of that, real quick, Carl, I will just say it works the other way too. You can end up being on loan to companies where
Correct.
you don't actually officially, you're more of a 1099 or you do fractional work or something like that for companies where they're in on the plan and somebody has identified you as a fast mover, rising star, put whatever you want on it. And they say, Carl is on this track and this is the goal. And it's actually understood that all things being considered, you'll work for this company for 4 years.
Yeah.
And then it's understood that you'll move on to another company that maybe isn't directly competitive. It's not a problem for you to move from one to the other so that you can gain certain skills. That can both be beneficial to the company and you as the employer easily. There's lots of companies that would sign on to something like that and say, hey, we're actually totally cool coming into this, knowing that there's the contractual obligation is that Carl's with us for 4 years. We are going to get the most out of Carl. At 4 years, we think we'll hit this mark and we'll have, hopefully, because of Carl's success and others, we'll move past where Carl's area of expertise is, which is totally fine. You always hear about companies that can get companies up revenue up to 5 million, but they're not great at getting to 250 million. That takes a different set of skills than somebody who's already been there. So I see this as, yes, what you're saying, but also that could totally work from the benefit of the company. It's not necessarily to the detriment of the company oh, this agent is going to be moving Carl secretly around. It's like, no, why don't we all collectively agree that this is a desired path that brings Carl the best balance of work and life balance and what you want to create, and there's more of a general agreement across multiple parties involved, as opposed to you just trying to have to figure it out. Honestly, that's a great way to be, because lots of people just don't necessarily have the connections necessary because of the colleges or not colleges or where they grew up.
So in the context of AGI, we would say that was a pro and a con, right? Like depending on how that happens.
It could
Brian,
be
you had
the idea of having a person, as a personal assistant, right? I mean, we can apply that to education or anything else, but it's just having that work, that professional personal assistant that could be working with you, but not necessarily behind closed doors, was my point.
Right. I just want to bring it back to the AGI conversation because that slipped a little bit, but you have some AGI stuff you want to share with us. So
it all made sense to me back.
Go. Talk to us about the Senate hearing.
No, listen, that was in the show description. So that's why I did some research on it, because, part of AGI is obviously talking about what the government is or is not doing about it. And the short answer to that is they are not. The U.S. government, that is. That's not to say, I mean, places like Canada, the EU, other places are actually putting some laws in place that are forward thinking, but even those aren't necessarily AGI specific. So let's just focus there, because there was a Senate hearing, committee hearing on about 6 weeks ago on September 17th, and they had 4 witness testimonies. They had David Evan Harris, who is the former Meta civic integrity team at Meta, William Saunders, the former OpenAI engineer, Dr. Margaret Mitchell, former co-lead of Google's ethical AI team, and Helen Toner, director at Georgetown University's CSET. I don't know what that means off the top of my head, but they had 4 people come in, and typical like sort of big Senate boring room, and you have the panel in front of you, and they're just there to give their opinion. And I want to read through all of it. I did definitely use ChatGPT for this, so just for everybody's awareness, what I did was I downloaded the PDFs of the exact witness testimonies from the 4 people I just mentioned, and then I used ChatGPT and said, like, well, help me understand where these cross over and where the big overall arching issues are with AGI as it relates to governance. Right? What can governments do about it? So that's where this comes from. And they all highlighted different things. David Evan Harris, the first person I mentioned, talked about one critical point he made was that even the largest AI companies are calling for regulation, highlighting their own inability to self-regulate effectively, which we've seen this before. We've seen OpenAI say, hey, we're actually okay with this. Meta has said, hey, we wouldn't be opposed to having more regulation. And you think that's like counterintuitive, but like they're actually sort of calling for it in some cases. William Saunders, he expressed doubts about OpenAI's focus on safety, noting that several key researchers had left due to a lack of support for safety teams. Like they disbanded super alignment team, which I'm sure you guys talked about. He even talked about how they were able to openly, in some cases, play around with biological threats. I'm sure it was red teaming or testing, but he was expressing concerns about maybe how easy that was or what the oversights were up to that. And also how they were able to sort of quickly go past some of the gatekeeping. And this was known to be available in OpenAI without a whole lot of oversight on top of it.
So that relates to something that happened last week, where the White House released a strategy for biological threats, specifically related to AI and the increased likelihood that could happen. In the it's a directive to like many agencies, like prep for this. Right? This is the likelihood that this could happen is raised. And as Carl was talking about, like the PhD level of the wisdom needed to create a biological threat is being lowered because AI and AI superintelligence, or maybe it's not even super, maybe this is not that hard to do, but the access to that kind of information is going to be available and is maybe starting to be available to more people. Therefore, the threat likelihood raises.
So Beth, when you just said available to more people, the only thing concerning about AGI coming sooner than later is that the only people that'll be able to access it, or the only countries, is it really benefiting the entire world, or is it only benefiting people who have the ability to access such technology, who have the ability to, have a computer, have broadband, have some sort of connection to be able to use it? Because there's so many people who don't have that. And how do you go about spreading that knowledge that, hey, as a society and humanity as a whole, we have this thing that can help everybody? How do you go about telling everybody that it can do that, to those who aren't very focused on this? They're focused on their lives, their families. How do you go about doing that? And the faster it comes, well, it's okay, so then what? Like, we still have a bunch of issues that I think a lot of people were thinking, oh, AGI can solve it. It's like, well, can't solve it like the next day. Like there's still way you have to reach people to be able to use it. And I'm a big believer in, you know, to get people to know how to use it, they have to, I mean, to get people to, you know, do really amazing things with it, people have to use it, right? And I think that's what I remember when GPT-4 was launched, that was something that Sam Altman said is they want to make sure to get these technologies. I think every single OpenAI person has said this. They want to get it into people's hands for them to use it. And we've seen it with even the product team has said, hey, we want to get it to consumers first, then enterprise second, which is kind of reverse than Google first, and then enterprise first, and then people second. So, but then how do we, because there's maybe people we have never heard of that this thing clicks for them and they can do amazing things, but how do we get it to them first?
Right.
Think about how you would put this into the hands of people. Today, very, very few people are sitting at their computers or using their Chat GPT app on their phone. It's probably in the, still single digit percentages of penetration in the general public. But there's a lot of people who have smart homes with speakers that they can ask questions to, like Alexa and Siri. And how does AGI, when it's available, appear there? Like,
Right.
what benefit would it be to your home and to your smart speaker, to have AGI behind the scenes? Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't see the benefit accruing really to the general public except indirectly. So I don't see the simple answer to how do you get AGI into the hands of people. The logical path in my own mind is a personal assistant on my phone that is super intelligent. So eventually Apple and the Android ecosystem deliver to you a super intelligence that's personalized to you and is hopefully running locally, because otherwise you're really dependent on a service provider to deliver that super intelligence.
So one thing I would ask everyone here. So there was the guy out in Wyoming ran for mayor, right? Saying his whole platform they're going to make all government decisions, ChatGPT. So if we did have AGI, and I saw this, and that AGI decided to run for president in the 2030s, would you vote for them? And I'd be like, I'm not. I was like, wait a minute. We still need monkey fingers. 1 billion person valued company. Does the government count as a company? What does that mean? Can we replace government officials with AGI like government officials who could potentially make better decisions than some of our government officials now? And there's going to be a county that's going to do that. There's going to be one county. I'm sorry, it's going to be in the United States that it's going to vote for something like this, and it's going to be hilarious. It's going to be news, and I don't know if it's going to work out, but it's going to be one county that does it, and I don't know what it is, but I'm waiting for the day.
I mean, we vote in actors and professional wrestlers, so there's always that. We have a history of such things. Hey, before we go, because I know we're wrapping up on time, I didn't get a chance to finish up what I was talking about with the Senate thing, and I do want to bring up these 4 parts. I don't necessarily need to get into, like I said, Dr. Margaret Mitchell and Helen Toner also had points to make about AGI, but just to keep it succinct, here's sort of the big picture as I was doing the research on this. Number one, misalignment between tech and policy. While insiders see AGI as achievable soon, there is a massive gap between the urgency of safety insiders perceive as and the slow policy response. That was one of them. Failure of self-regulation, voluntary agreements and commitments are ineffective, with tech leaders admitting that internal controls aren't enough to handle risk. We just heard a little bit about that. Number 3 was the race to deployment versus safety. Companies driven by market pressures often prioritize launching AI systems quickly over comprehensive safety checks, creating systemic vulnerabilities. We've certainly talked about that. And 4 was existential risks and security gaps, potential AGI capabilities to assist in biological threats, which we talked about, and the inadequacies in safeguarding these advancements highlight the seriousness of unchecked AI development. And it just goes on to sort of wrap up and talk about how all these testimonies, the four of them, point towards the same critical message. AGI is on the horizon, and the current regulatory and safety measures are not nearly sufficient to keep it in check.
Yeah. And actually, when the Blumenthal came out after that hearing and came and said on the horizon, he said in a decade, right? So like AGI is on the horizon, and we can't even agree on like where the horizon is, right? Because the idea of something in 3 years or 18 months seems so far-fetched that it must be an exaggeration. Therefore, to be a little more accurate, we're going to talk about a decade.
I go back to, I think, Andy, you made this point. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we were talking one day on the show and you were just making the point. I agree with it, is that the idea of, I guess, AGI globally or broadly is not really the way we will see this. There will be no light switch moment. I know Sam Altman has also talked about that, and so have others. What I believe you mentioned, Andy, is that we will see AGI in pockets. We will see it in certain industries where we sort of as a society collectively agree and go, oh, that's very, very intelligent and beyond human capabilities, but it's limited in medical whatever between here and here. And it has parameters. It's not AGI across all human ability. It will probably arrive in pockets and in segments where there's a collective agreement that it is definitely smarter than any human's ability, but between this guideline and this guideline, or this guardrail and this guardrail.
And
I don't know if you had said that, Andy, you could correct me, but I remember us talking about that on the show.
Yeah, I think there are curbed spaces in which you'll see rapid advancements to ASI.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that even purpose-focused LLMs that have been trained on a specific task, they end up, it turns out, being superseded by the very largest frontier models that have reasoning. So it could be, it could be that we'll see it in those pockets as you describe them, but it could also be that there is a model out there that's being refined by AI processes that will be able to do it all.
Yeah.
Especially if it has the access to the data and to the other LLMs and or other artificial intelligences. Right. Doesn't necessarily have to be a language transformer to, borrow from their expertise, but synthesize that all together in some collective way. So you'll always want to go to that top model if you're looking for advanced capabilities, rather than going to the purpose-built, focused one that's behind the curve.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to wrap it up there. I want to remind folks that you can go to the Daily AI Show. Just grab that QR code right there and get in touch with us. You can send us messages. What would you like to see us cover in new shows? And sign up for our newsletter. All kinds of great things. We have more coming for you in this Unintentional Fright Week on the Daily AI Show. We will be talking about the news tomorrow, and there's good news as well as frightening news, I'm sure. Thursday, we're talking about a Polish radio station who did some crazy stuff, and that could be somewhat frightening. And Friday, we'll be looking back at our past 9 shows. So I hope you can join us, and thanks for hanging out with us today. And have a good Tuesday. And yeah, now I'm going to turn on the music because we narrate this stuff when it's the first time we do it. Happy Tuesday, everybody.
You got it, Beth.